Sorcerers, we received some news today about the events at Gencon, and specifically the Crossroads event. We got all the floor rules, which is great. Very happy to have that document. If you have not seen it and you intend to participate in any Gencon event, I encourage you to go to the Sorcery official Discord, look in the Gencon channel, and pull it up and take a look, because it says a lot. But the reason for this video is because of what it says about the legality of Day of Judgment and swap. Now, the document states that these cards will be legal for the Crossroads event. In the case of Day of Judgment, it's not as concerning. Many folks in the competitive community have looked at Day of Judgment, and while it's cool and it has a neat effect, it's not something that looks like it's going to have some drastic impact on the game, at least prior to Gothic. On the other hand, swap is already being considered one of the most powerful cards that could potentially be in the set. And I know, just recently I talked about Just a Rock and how that ended up being nothing. But the people that are talking about swap and the things that even I've thought about that it can do, it appears to me and many others that this card is going to be extremely powerful and be used a lot as a finisher, as a way to door your opponent. And while I am very happy to have swap, I want this card, I did not want to see it in competitive play before Gothic came out and everyone could have a chance at it. Because here's the thing, I looked up the information about how many copies of swap are going to be available. There were 4 cornerstone events last weekend. One in Melbourne. I think someone told me to say Melbourne. Melbourne, Australia. One over in, I believe it was Germany. I think it was Germany. And 2 here in the US. Which means that there are 12 copies of swap in the wild. 6 of them are in the US. In addition, there is a cornerstone coming up this weekend at No Land Beyond in Maryland. 3 more copies of swap in the wild, 9 in the United States. We now know the card is legal. So there are 15 copies of this card. But in addition to that, if it was 15, it was like, well, 15. Okay, 15. That's not a lot. In addition, as part of the floor rules, it was announced that 20 additional copies of swap will be given out randomly at the Gencon Limited Championship the day before the Crossroads. So 35 copies in the wild. Now, unless Eric's Curiosa decides that they're going to have a visit the booth promo and it happens to be swap, then 35 is what's out there. And I know that's not a lot. And I know many of you think, well, if they're giving away randomly, then a person's only going to have 1. So it's the effect of a unique, and it's not something like the ring that's going to be in the game permanently. And again, I'm assuming that Eric's Curiosa is not going to give this away as a visit the booth promo, because if they are, then everything I'm about to say is meaningless. And of course, they're not going to tell us if they're going to do that. So Right now, my assumption is there are 35 copies that are going to be in the wild. 29 of them in the US. Now, the sorcery community over in Maryland is actually pretty active and has some pretty competitive players. They now know that they could potentially use the 3 copies of Swap, just borrow them from whoever they give them to, or however they, distribute them. They're supposed to be given to the community champions. Fine, but then, someone might say, hey, I'd like to borrow that copy. Would you let me borrow it? I'll take it to Gencon and bring it back. Or even, I'd like to acquire that copy and trade for that card or whatever. And now all of a sudden, that individual has 2 or 3 copies of Swap to put in their deck. And let's say they're one of the individuals that's very good at this game, has a strong competitive background, and has played at many competitive events and placed well. And now all of a sudden, they have a play set of a card that they're going to put in their Crossroads deck that most people will only have access, most people will not have access to any of them, and a few people may have access to one. Now, maybe at Gen Con, when those 20 copies are handed out randomly, someone might be, competitive players are going to look for every edge they can get. And having access to a card as powerful as Swap might motivate them to see who is given those random swaps and be like, oh, hey, so you got one of those. Any chance I could borrow it? I'll give it right back. Whatever. Just for this event, if you're not playing in the Crossroads. Oh, you're not playing Water. Yeah, just if I could just borrow it for the event. Because here's the thing. Deck submissions aren't until 10 p.m. Friday. So if we don't have to submit our decks for the Crossroads until 10 p.m. Friday, then that means that they can put those swaps in. Now all of a sudden, maybe you've got a couple of players who are very good at the game, who are very competitive, with that edge over everyone else. I think that is a terrible idea. Everyone in the sorcery community is excited for the very first Crossroads event, for the first opportunity to win the rainbow foil avatars. The most competitive players have been preparing for this event for months. Literally. They are getting ready to spend thousands of dollars to come to Indianapolis to play in this event and to try to win that card with their chosen avatar. And now, a week before the event, after months of playtesting, they now know that Swap could be something they have to face. Now, at least they will have the knowledge that it's out there, that it's a possibility. That will help. But it doesn't change the fact that most of them will not have any access to this powerful card. And I think that is a serious problem. Especially when this is the first sorcery event that is a Crossroads that, sorcery's behind, and we're going to see these first things. And now all of a sudden there is the potential that someone could win this event because they are able to acquire 3 copies of Swap. And in every one of their games, Swap ends up playing a critical point in the game and saves the game for them. And yeah, maybe it doesn't happen in every game, but if it happens in 1 or 2 games, it's 1 or 2 games they may have lost if they did not have Swap. So I do not like this decision. I think that it could cast a shadow over sorcery competitive play, that the first event could end up with someone winning using a card that only 35 will be in circulation. I just don't think that is a good look for sorcery, for organized play. I just think that's, yeah. Now, the one tiny silver lining, and the thing that I've discussed this with some people, and the thing that they have been pointing out is, there's only 35. Nobody's going to have a play set. I think I'll argue that point. Someone's probably going to have a play set because they're going to be very motivated because they want one of those rainbow avatar foils to end up with a play set somehow. And then I've had someone else say, well, it's a good card, but it's not Ring. Okay. But the bigger argument has been, well, at most, it'll basically be like a unique. People may, a few people are going to have one copy in their deck. So it shouldn't have that large of an impact on the overall event. It shouldn't create the shadow that I just mentioned. And I sincerely hope all those people are right. But I just cannot get out of my head the idea of a person preparing for this first ever Crossroads event, spending months getting ready, spending thousands of dollars to come here to play, tune their deck to the nines. They've thought of every strategy. They've learned all the decks in the meta. And all of a sudden, they end up playing one of those decks that's got some swaps. And those swaps result in them losing the game. And because of that loss, they're not able to get one of the rainbow avatars. Yeah. That's my worry. That's why I really don't agree with this decision. Even if sorcery's values are to allow you to play with any card you own, even if that's what sorcery is and what it wants to be, that you can play with whatever you want to play, I think allowing someone to use a play set of a card, there's only 35 copies in existence, in circulation, I just think that is a terrible idea and could result in players leaving. I think some competitive players are probably looking at this decision already and saying, if they're just going to let this card in, why am I here? Why did I put in all this time? And now I have to deal with this powerful card and worrying that I'm going to encounter it. I have to be thinking about that all the time now. All the stuff I already have to think about. All the other cards I have to have knowledge of. I have to be like, yeah, when I sit down with my opponent, they flip that druid. Okay, this is probably Steam. First sight comes out. Yeah, this is definitely Steam. I know it. It's Steam. And I've got to keep in the back of my mind, oh, swap. What if they're one of those people with swap? And with the rise of the Grim Gisarm and the Mask of Madness, because of the rule changes, now swap's there? I got to worry about that? It just doesn't sit right with me. But I don't think it's going to change. The floor rules are out. I don't expect them to change. And mostly I'm just hoping that what I just said doesn't happen. That, enough people are out there that the card, no one's able to get 3 copies or even 2 copies. The submission timeline of 10 p.m. is tight enough that people don't actually get it submitted in time, and so they don't make the swaps. They don't swap the swaps into their deck. Right? But I just really, really dislike this decision. And I hope for those of you that watch my channel that are very competitive, that are coming to Gencon to play in the Crossroads and are excited for that, and who, think you've got a real shot at winning one of the rainbow foils, I hope you don't hit that deck that has 3 copies of swap, and then you lose the game and lose your shot at one of the rainbow foils because swaps were allowed into the event. Don't know what else to say about that. There it is. Other things that happened, I'm just going to mention these at the end for anyone that stuck around. They did also confirm in the floor rules. Oh, let's go back to swap real fast. So the 20 swaps, the swaps in the Cornerstone are supposed to be awarded to community champions. That was kind of how it was worded. And the 20 that are being given away in the limited championship are just being given away randomly. Now, I suppose an argument can be made that anyone playing Sorcery is a community champion. They can be their own community champion in their own ways, whatever that is. Introducing a new player, bringing in friends, they can. So, all right. But I got to think that people that actually, the 5 events, the Cornerstones that did happen, and community champions did get a swap card because they've donated bulk and they've helped numerous new players fill holes in their decks and given them the cards they need to build the deck and play the game. And they've taught players and they've done all those things. And now all of a sudden 20 copies are going to be given out randomly. And that's another thing that's kind of a feel bad about the whole situation. But other things that were mentioned, we did kind of get a little Dragon Lord thing. Kairos, you're going to have a judge present whenever you resolve his effect. Didn't tell us what his effect is, but a judge is going to have to be present, so you can speculate on what that's going to be. Next, I think this is kind of the final thing. Is this the final thing? Yeah. They also mentioned in the floor rules that if you decide to play in the 10 a.m. Thursday draft, you will be given some type of a voucher so that you can get Dragon Lord. So, if you want guaranteed access to Dragon Lord, you should buy a ticket for the 10 a.m. draft and play in it. There's still lots of tickets available for that event. So if your only goal going into the vendor hall at 10 a.m. was to get Dragon Lord, just play in the draft. Play in the draft. They're going to give you a voucher. You have to redeem it Thursday. I don't think that's too terrible a thing to ask. So you play in the draft. You get your voucher. After the draft, you go and acquire your copy of Dragon Lord. Great. So guaranteed access to a single copy of Dragon Lord by playing in that 10 a.m. draft event. Some people may argue, well, what if you can buy multiple copies on Thursday and I want 5? I mean, I guess, but I still have a very strong feeling there's going to be a pretty strict limit on these things of 1. Maybe there won't be, but I still think there's going to be a strong limit. It's going to be 1, maybe 2. So I don't know. If you want to take that risk, hey, roll those dice. But if you want guaranteed access and you just need 1 copy to play in that 10 a.m. draft and 10 a.m. Thursday. And you're good to go. You'll get your voucher and you can go get it after you finish up the draft. Fantastic. Have a copy of Dragon Lord. I think that was it for the floor rules. Lots of stuff in there. Again, if you're going to play in the events, please take the time to read it. Lots of things to digest, to understand how those events are going to run. But most importantly, realize if you're playing in the Crossroads event, Day of Judgment And most importantly, swap is now legal. And it is entirely possible that you may run up against that card. So at least you can arm yourself with that knowledge. And I hope that you don't actually encounter the card, especially if it loses you the game. Just my thoughts.